Have you ever wondered why the discussion on literature such as there is in the country that you and I live in, that is Anglophone India, is most often so vacuous? The discussion, if we can call it that, veers between, on the one hand, worshipful PR or personal denigration, and on the other, a kind of a moral seriousness to do with the themes of what's being written about and the importance of those themes. It's as if we're influenced, or the way we think about literature is determined by the news, the kind of discussion that we see on news channels and on TV, by what academia considers, within quotes, serious, rather than on us concentrating or finding a language with which to speak about the delight of language itself, and the creative imagination as it expresses itself through language. To do this, we have to turn away from the world that Anglophone India has become in the last 50 years, which is a world dominated by sociology rather than literature, to a world where literature itself, in all its idiosyncrasy, is a viable history and project. And for this world, the most immediate access we might have to it, although it seems very distant from us, is the world of the literatures in the Indian languages. Literatures in the Indian languages are not important because they signify authenticity, true Indianness, or immemorial Indianness. They are none of these things. They are important because they embody idiosyncrasy, experiment, waywardness, and contain the avant-gardes of our country, who are unconcerned about theme as being a predetermined notion of seriousness, unconcerned also with that huge theme for Anglophone Indians, India, unconcerned about India, concerned mainly with the shape and form of written expression, which each time has to be new to be viable. So I myself became aware of this extraordinary inheritance that's around us in two phases. The first one had to do with my childhood in Bombay, where in fact, the kind of Bombay I lived in and school I went to, I had no connection with this inheritance. Bombay made and still makes of English a kind of marker of pedigree rather than a kind of thing to engage with seriously. It's a class marker. But it was at home that my mother would convey to me the delight and eccentricity of Bengali literature. So, and when I would come to Calcutta from Bombay, I would again become exposed to this peculiarity, this anomalousness that was so different from everything we were being told was important in school. This was the first phase when I became aware that there's something else beyond what we are being told is important. And that something is there in literature. And the second phase was when I was editing in the late 90s the Picketer Book of Modern Indian Writing. And here I understood how these literatures contained a kind of value, a new way of looking at things that had nothing to do with the imprimatur of Indian history or India giving them a kind of endorsement. It's from that world, that very unique world, for instance, that of the modern Indian languages, that's an observation like Satyajit Ray's could have emerged when he said, some of the worst films are made on the noblest of themes. So once we enter this domain, we are confronting delight in language, imagination, and expression, and we are not preoccupied anymore with theme. You could begin by looking at Tagore's essay on nursery rhymes. You could look at Jibonananda Das, his poetry, Bibhuti Bhushan Banerjee, Pather Pachal, his first novel, almost a contemporary of Mrs. Dalloway, a novel which very easily could have been a socialist realist representation of an impoverished village, but it is as far away from that as Mrs. Dalloway is from a realist representation of upper class life in London. Nayar Masood, Kurattilin Haidar, a more contemporary writer, Ambai, short story writer in Tamil. You can begin to explore these to find literature, find that literature is a kind of liberation. Thank you.